Well, I have to admit, this is one of my favorite sermons every year, the sermon on Graduate Sunday. I feel like I get to give some advice. And so I've been working on this sermon for a little while, thinking about what I wanted to say, thinking I had my sermon prepared before I took a week off for the birth of my daughter, and then the world changed in the last 10 days. And so today I want to talk about change. I want to talk to our graduates about change, and I want to talk to everyone else about change, because change is inevitable. There's nothing we can do to stop it. And I am certain that you all understand that the world is a different place now than it was when you started high school or college. The world is a different place now than it was when you actually had your graduation ceremony a few weeks ago. And it's going to continue to change. And we need to be prepared for change. First off, change can be a really good thing. Change can bring joy to the world, or to you, when the doctor pulled Caroline out of when the Caroline was born. And the doctor held her and unfolded her. And there she was. I was right there. And it was like my heart jumped out of my body. It was a moment that I was not prepared for. I don't know if you ever prepare for it. And it was a moment where I realized that after this moment, my life will never be the same. And it was wonderful. And my life has changed forever. And it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And just being there for that and loving her and loving the change has just brought great joy to my life. And there are changes that will happen in your life that will forever define who you are. James and Vanessa, when you get married in a couple weeks, that will forever define who you are, and it'll be a change of great joy. But not all changes bring joy. Some changes can be both simultaneously good and bad, depending on who you are. And this week, the Supreme Court made a decision about same-gender marriage. And it depends on who you are, whether that's a good decision or a bad decision, whether that's a good change or a bad change. There are certainly pastors who have come out against it. One pastor and radio host said that today is our moral 9/11, and it is a day that will live in infamy. Others came out in great support and in great joy because of the decision. And it's a change that we have to address as a church, definitely. First, I guess I have to share what I believe. Under the law, I believe that the Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal and have the right to pursue happiness. So under the law, I think the decision is a fair one. But I also know the First Amendment says that the churches have a right and pastors have a right to say no. We're not going to do that. And so the pastor that said that he would light himself on fire before he performed a same-gender wedding is protected by the First Amendment and does not have to light himself on fire. Unless he wants to. And so we have to decide then, what are we going to do? We have the First Amendment right as a church to decide what is it that we are going to do. And we're going to make that decision together. We're going to have conversations about it. We're going to have opportunities where people can come and share their opinions, and we're going to make a decision together as a congregation. We've already started talking about a wedding policy. Now we just have one more question to add to the list. And it's okay, we're going to do it together. Because I know that some of you here, years ago, have reconciled same-gender marriage and the Bible. And I know that some of you will never. And you know what? Neither of you, in my mind, are wrong. And there's a place for every one of you here. There's a place for every opinion here. And we are going to do this together as a congregation, respectfully, with God's grace. So we'll decide together. It's our First Amendment right, and that's what will do. And change, if we do make changes here, we'll come up with a policy, so it will be a change. It will be difficult for some and happy for others, but that's part of life. And so for the graduates, this is my wish for you, that you would hear this today, is that I encourage you, when things like this happen, to know where you stand, to be able to defend what you believe, but to realize that just because somebody disagrees with you does not mean they're wrong, and to learn to see the other side. Change happens in most cases, but some things need to change. And it's on you, the graduates, the new generation who are going to be running the world. It's your challenge to make changes that need to change, and it's on us too. For instance, let's use a real easy example of something that needs to change. We have a problem in this country with racism. It manifested itself 10 days ago in a way that brought me to tears. And we need to change the way we talk about it and change the way we act about it. And it's the easiest example of what I'm talking about is ISIS, terrible organization, doing terrible things. We talk about the people that they kill and we say they are just religious extremists. There are gang members shooting each other, and we call them thugs. And there is one of us, a white Lutheran, who walks into an African American church and kills 9 people, and we say, oh, he's just mentally ill. We have a problem with evil. That's what it is. ISIS is evil. Gang members shooting one another is evil. And Lutherans who kill African American Christians are evil. The world is evil at times. There is evil all around us. And it's evil to call it anything else. And we need to make a change. Because hate and evil can only be defeated with love. I was brought to tears of grief, knowing that a Lutheran, an ELCA Lutheran did this, that 9 people welcomed him into their Bible study, and after an hour of Bible study, took their lives. But I was brought to tears a couple days later when the families of those 9 faced the murderer and said, I forgive you. That is grace. That is God working in the midst of a terrible situation. That is the love of God shining into the darkness. And that is the way we change the world. But the reality is all change brings fear. We have changes that we are making every day here at church. Changes to our property that bring fear. Changes to our staff, which brings fear. You all are looking for jobs and starting new jobs, and that brings fear. You all are going off to college, and that brings fear. Those are necessary changes, though. And standing up for what's right when you don't have to is even more terrifying. But I want to remind you what Jesus says to Jairus today. I tell you, a text about a father whose daughter was ill, is dying, really hit home for me in ways I never thought it would. I'll do anything to get my daughter to stop crying and to think of a daughter who's actually sick. And Jesus says, Jairus, don't be afraid, just believe. And if I'm Jairus, I'm thinking, what do you mean? It's easy for you to say she's not your daughter. It's easy for you to say it's not your career, Jesus. It's easy for you to say it's not your life, Jesus. It's easy to say, do not be afraid, just believe. Some pep talks fall on hollow ears. But the good news is our text today gives us 2 promises. that are more than pep talks. Our psalm today, the very first verse of our psalm. I will exalt you, O Lord, because you have lifted me up and have not let my enemies triumph over me. Sometimes that's hard for us to understand, that God has defeated our enemies. But I tell you right now that those 9 Christians who died in South Carolina are celebrating victory over their enemies right now. And then the gospel. If there's anything we can learn from today's gospel, it's that it's never too late for God to show up. It's never too late for God to show up and turn death into life. It's never too late for God to show up and turn hate into love. And it's never too late for God to show up and give us answers to really difficult questions. Because the reality of life is that we're all going to have really difficult questions. And we're going to want answers. And when we turn to the world for answers, when we turn to the media for answers, when we turn to Facebook for answers, more often than not, we find the wrong answers. It's never too late to turn to God for answers. It's never too late, like in the psalm today, to cry out, "O Lord, be my helper." And it's never too late for God to change us and to change the world through us. And if you aren't afraid, and if you just believe, you'll realize that that is exactly God's plan for you. Amen.